All right, I think we're ready. As soon as that pops up in the tab, I'll start. Excuse me. Let's see. There we go. So welcome. This is the Friday Night Comics Workshop at the Sequential Artists Workshop. We call it We Believe in Comics because we took it over from the Believer magazine about a year ago. Who are we? We're a nonprofit comic school. We have a lot of courses. You can find us at learn.sawcomics.org. That's our website. And here's what's coming up soon. Next week in the spot. Actually, no, next week we're going to take a break for Thanksgiving. In 2 weeks in the spot, we're going to have Kristen Ratke back. Kristen Ratke started these workshops, so we're really honored that she's going to come do that. And happening at SAW in the upcoming weeks and months, Georgia Weber is doing Drawing Health on Saturdays, which is really lovely and pretty affordable. You should take a look. Matt, who's going to be hosting right now, has a course starting in March, but that's up on the SAW website now. And also, we're starting a donation, what do they call it? A fundraiser. We'll talk more about that soon. Tax deductible, all that stuff, but it's not really super ready. Anyway, sawcomics.org. That's where you can find all that stuff. Hashtags for tonight. When you share some stuff, do it with the hashtag Friday Night Comics. That way we can track it and see you. We are at Comics Workshop, and I'll put Matt's stuff in the chat. You can find his identities. You can also go share at members.sawcomics.org. That's where all of our free sharing happened. Thanks for everybody who donated to this workshop or other Friday night workshops. It helps to pay the artists, helps make these affordable and free actually to y'all. So we really appreciate that. And there's ways that you can support us. That'll be in the chat too. So yeah, that's some stuff we do. I got to change that slide. Here we go. Right, I mentioned we're doing sustaining member donations. I'll talk about that in the chat. Please, no inappropriate speech or imagery. Keep it PG-13, please. We did good last week. Good job, people. 2 weeks ago, we had a few more curse words. Anyway, enjoy. I'm so honored that Matt Madden is here. He's got just a wealth of history and smarts, and he's one of my oldest friends. I'm really honored that he's here. I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to Matt in just a second. Let's see, are we there? And Matt is spotlighted. Yeah. So Matt, I will I'll be here. I'm mostly going to be like summarizing what you say in the chat for people that for whom that helps, but otherwise I'm going to let you be free and just holler if you need me.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Saw. And thank you, all of you, for coming out to join me this evening, whether it's here in the chat and on the Zoom with me, or watching live on YouTube, or in the distant future, watching this on some YouTube on archive.org in the year 3000. All right. Let's jump right into it. We're going to make a comic together. And it's I'm going to just give you the assignment first, and then I'll talk about a bit about what we're doing and some of the ideas behind it as we go. So I'm going to share my screen here and just go straight into a little slideshow. All right, did that work? You guys all seeing my lovely mug on the screen there? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let me see. Actually, let me get the screen, the chat window up here. We were complaining about Zoom earlier, and one problem is that I can never get the cursor to show up in my, once I get into full screen share. But anyway,
there it is.
There goes my, yeah, but not on that, oh, here, resume. Okay, here we are. All right, we good?
Yeah.
So I'm Matt. This is one of my new author shots I had done recently that I'm quite happy with. Here's a few of my books. You saw some glimpses of them. Some of you might have seen or read some of them. My most recent book in the middle here is called Ex Libris. It came out last year from Uncivilized Books. The book I'm best known for probably is the one you see on the top left there, 99 Ways to Tell a Story, Exercise and Style, which I will talk a little bit about more later as we get into while you guys are drawing. Drawn Onward and Bridge, or shorter standalone stories that are very heavily based on constraints, which again was what we're going to be talking about today. Odds Off and some of my earlier graphic novels. Done a lot of stuff over the years. I've also done a lot of work with my wife, Jessica Abel, who's also a cartoonist, Art Babe and La Perdida and Out on the Wire. And for years, we taught at School of Visual Arts together in New York. And out of that work and my 99 Ways to Tell a Story and her advocacy for, learning comics and DIY stuff, we did these 2 textbooks, Drawing Words and Writing Pictures and Mastering Comics, which were published for second books and are still available. And we were also the series editors of the Best American Comics series for a while, which unfortunately was discontinued a few years ago after Bill Cardellopoulos ran it for a few years. Another thing I do is translation, mostly from French, both in book form, all book form, but the stuff I'm most proud of is probably the stuff I've done with New York Review comics, like this book Pierrot by Edmond Baudouin, Zabim Sisters, which was actually published by First Second, and things like the new Manuel Fior book, Hypericum, actually in English, which will be coming out later this year. I actually just finished translating that for an online company called Europe Comics, which you might have heard of. I also did Kathleen Milius's Lightness and a few other books by her. So a wide variety of stuff, ranging from personal choices like Baudouin and more commercial work that I'm just done on a sort of project by project basis. So that's just a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from. So let's get right into working on a comic. So what I want to do is give you guys a little assignment that you can be working on. And then while you're working on stuff, I'll kind of go through a little slide show and talk a little bit about some of my thoughts on working with constraints. And if this might be entirely, I suspect some of you have already thought about this, or maybe even made some constrained comics before. But others of you, this might be what am I talking about? This whole obstacle course and constraints and all this stuff. So let's just get right into it, and then I think it'll become clear as you work on it and as we talk about it. So what I propose today in our little obstacle course is something we're going to call a Tarina comic. All right, and it's going to be a 1-page comic, and it's based on a poetry form originally called a tritina, but for reasons that are kind of boring, but related to other comics that I've done, I like to call it a tirina, derived from the number 3. And this is a poetry form that was invented or adapted by a Brooklyn poet named Marie Ponsat, who I just learned died a few years ago. And I'd like to share one of these poems for you, and then I'll reveal the structure. The first thing you'll notice when I read it is that it doesn't have a traditional rhyme scheme in particular. All right. So I know you came to draw comics, but first we're going to read a little poem. All right. This is called Living Room. The window's old and paint stuck in its frame. If we force it open, the glass might break. Broken windows cut and let in the cold to sharpen house-warm air with outside colds that aches to buckle every saving frame, and let the wind drive ice in through the break till chair, cupboard, walls, storm hit, all goods break. The family picture, wrecked, soaked in cold, would slip, wet and dangling out of its frame. Framed, it's a windbreak. It averts the worst cold. So, short poem, very, imagistic, full of a little bit of sadness, images of an old house, kind of rotting living room scene. And like I said, you notice it doesn't have any rhyme scheme to it in particular, but there is kind of something that might have drawn your attention and a kind of a repetitive nature of some of the words. And in fact, the way the Tritina works is it, instead of having rhyming words, it has 3, so the tri for tritina, 3 N-words, which repeat in different orders. So you have frame, break, and cold. And those 3 words repeat 3 times in a different order. So we get frame, break, cold, cold, frame, break, break, cold, frame, right? Those are the 3 possible, combinations of those 3 words. And then there's a last line which in poetry is called an envoy, where all three words are used in one line, okay? So what I propose to do today is to adapt this idea, this concept, into comics. And there are a number of ways you could do this, actually. But what I'm going to suggest is that we try and do a one-page comic with 9 panels. I'm showing you a grid here, but you could certainly break that up in a different way. And so if we think about the words having these 3 orders, we can just go work from letters here. So we can say they're A, B, C, C, A, B, B, C, A. These are 3 values, A, B, and C. You can make them whatever you want. It could be 3 words like Marie used in the poem, which were frame, break, and cold. It could be 3 shapes. It could be 3 colors. It could be 3 words that have some kind of meaning to you on a personal basis, or 3 things that you see in your studio right now that you that draw your attention. Okay. And so what you want to do is then make a comic of 1 page using those 3 elements in a different order. So say A is an apple. That means in the first panel, you're going to have a drawing of an apple, or somebody talking about an apple, or a prominent Adam's apple. You know, the fun will be to try and come up with interesting ways to kind of disguise it, so it doesn't come out looking like this diagram, right? We're not actually trying to make diagrams here. We're trying to make interesting comics. So the first time you have that A in that first panel, it'll be one thing. It'll have to reappear 5 panels later. You won't repeat the same panel, but you need to use that apple again in this example in some way or another. So it might turn into I don't know, an apple pie, for example, in the second iteration, and so on to the end. So what these will be is kind of like prompts that you can interpret as you like, either as words or as images or as metaphors, sound effects. You know, you could do a Tarina based on 3 different, on plop, bang, and pow, and see how many different things you could do with it in just 1 page. Putting them into different contexts each time. Part of the fun of doing this kind of thing is just like making it out of whole cloth. But since I know some of you, maybe this is like a whole new concept to you, maybe, I want to show you one example just to give you a concrete idea of what I'm talking about here. And I think this is a really good one that'll show you some of the stuff you can do with this. So I did this exercise at a residency in Florida a few years ago. And one of the residents, Jason Robinson, did the Tarina, and he chose 3 words to repeat. So line, curtain, and light. So in other words, A is line, B is curtain, and C is light. He also decided to add a secondary value, which is colors. So red, blue, and green. So A is line and red, B is curtain and blue, and light C is light and green. So each of those ABC panels, and each time it repeats, has to feature those elements somehow or another without being too repetitive or boring, and ideally try and tell some kind of story, or at least paint some kind of situation, make a coherent, complete comics page. So this is a bit on the PG-13 side, at least in terms of the drug use, but this is as hardcore as it's going to get, I think, here. So here's the page, and he calls it Punches Tarina. And you can see it's sort of about a sad sack clown who's really like at the edge of his rope, and he's supposed to go out on stage, and we see him doing drugs and smoking a cigarette, and they push him out on stage, and he appears to forget his line. So remember, the repeating words are line, curtain, and lights. But we also have the colors red, green, and blue that are repeating in a different order each time. So you can probably, with the color especially, you can see how he's worked it in to what's going on here. But let me show you a bit more explicitly what he's done here. So red, green, blue, right? Blue, red, green, green, blue, red. So it's a different order each time. And of course, it's extra funny because, of course, he's a clown. So he's got a red nose that is sort of emphasized in various ways. With the words, he had a lot of invention, especially with line, right? So First time, it's a line of cocaine that the guy is snorting. The second time it appears, which is in the middle of the panel, right? So you can imagine this being like that A that we saw in the diagram. It's the stage manager saying your ass is on the line here. You're like, this has got to work. And then the last becomes literally a punchline where he's like asking for his line. And it's breaking out of the page at the end, which is just sort of a nice flourish, I think. Bringing down the lights, the spotlight, lighting a cigarette. All right. So there's actions, there's images, there's idioms, there's all kinds of stuff going on here. So both the words and the colors are used differently every time. So I hope that's pretty clear. What I'd like to do, what I would suggest you do is, if you haven't already, why don't you take a screenshot of this image right here that'll give you the diagram, because it's very simple. But that means there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. All right. So you can do, in terms of what kind of comic you do, it can be anything you want. You can adapt this to whatever your mode of working is. If you like doing silly, funny animal comics, you could have the three values be something that would be productive there. I would say maybe not dog, cat, and mouse, because those are things you use all the time. But maybe a chew toy and something arbitrary like an alarm clock and some other thing, something that's you're kind of throwing a wrench in your own works a little bit to sort of push yourself out of your normal comfort zone. But you could do this to do a memoir comic talking about your everyday life. You could do, as we saw, this structure is derived from poetry. And I would encourage you, if the idea of combining poetry and comics and doing something more lyrical is something you're interested in, excuse me, you can go in that direction too. So it's really up to you what you want to do with it. So I'm going to leave this up here, and I'm going to look through maybe the comments for a minute and just make sure if anyone is totally lost about this. But a general rule, do we think are people clear on the assignment here?
I'm not getting too much worry or concern yet. And Mishka,
I see one guy saying this guy, Susan's asking this guy had more than 20 minutes. Yeah, this was an exercise he did over several days. So there was like a thumbnail version. So yeah, and actually thank you for bringing it up, so we're going to draw for about 20 minutes and then share. So yeah, no, very much this can be like a thumbnail, just first attempt, just sort of like figure out how this stuff's going to fit together. And speaking of which, 7:19. All right, so we'll work till about 7:40 and start sharing. So absolutely no pressure to make it look really great. You don't need to use color, obviously, if you're working digitally and you want to drop in colors, that'd be great. But no, it can be just black and white and pencil. The one thing I would say, and I'll say this having watched a couple of the videos on YouTube, try to make it, at least, even if you're in pencil, the line's dark enough that if you're just holding it up to the screen that we can see it clearly. And ditto for if you use any lettering, just try and make it, something that we can make sense of. I'm going to take a minute and just read through some comments here and see if there's anything that needs addressing here.
Mishka posted a random generator for 3 objects, which sounds...
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah. So the words can be totally random as well. Yeah. You could absolutely use random generators to come up with words. The more random, the better in a lot of ways, which again, I'll talk about as we go through the my little slideshow while you guys are working.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, perchance.org/object. That's the 3-word generator. Thank you for that, Mishka.
And I saved some of the screenshots at a link I'm putting in the chat.
Okay, good. Should you be creating in a particular order? That's a good question. So again, this is like the grid is very much a schematic thing, but you should be thinking, we do want to create a comics page. So if you're telling any kind of story, whether it's autobio or a gag or something more, dreamlike or surreal, you do want to think about it starting on that first panel and working its way, left to right down the page. So do think about the comics page as a complete unit. That said, I'm not forbidding anyone from breaking the rules if you feel like doing something that's more, loosey-goosey, or that plays around with the reading path more. That's also, Jen was having some Zoom issues. I'm going to scroll down and see if you didn't get it sorted out here. And again, if you basically screen grab this slide that's up right now, that should give you the basis to start on here. All right, so Tom, I'm going to start doing just like talking through some slides. I don't have music to play, but I thought what I would do is talk a little bit about some of my background and how I came to thinking about constraints in this way that has been very productive in my own personal work and in my, even in my enrichment as a reader of comics and literature and other media. It's become a really sort of a key focal point for the way I approach consuming and creating art. Chris asks, it's just 3 of each in any order you choose. No, the pattern is actually prescriptive. So you're going to have 3 elements and they're going to appear in the same. That's why you want to save this diagram. Because again, if you have an apple, you're going to have an apple in the first panel, in the 5th panel, and in the last panel. So the idea is to keep that same pattern, because it's that's sort of the constraint, is to use that pattern of all 3 orders of ABC, which, there's only 3. It's not that sophisticated. But you can expand this to a bigger idea of you having 6 or 7 or 8 elements that repeat over the course of a number of pages. Hope that's clear. All right, so Tom, if you'll keep an eye on the chat, if questions like that come along as we go, I'm happy to just interrupt and troubleshoot. If there's something you're like, am I cheating? Can I do this? Or, I'm totally lost. Just give a yell and we'll address it. Okay.
Okay. I'll keep an eye on it.
All right. So this is a very kind of truncated version of a slideshow talk I do a lot called Build Your Own Labyrinth, which, as it happens, is also the name of the course that I'll be offering in March. It's going to be all 4 Saturdays of March 2023. So I encourage you to keep in touch if you like what we're doing in this workshop, or you're watching this on YouTube later.
Matt,
I will be doing. Go ahead.
We've already got a question that I think you might like to answer. It says, okay, is it best to pick an item that has different meanings?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, as we saw in the example, the word line, there's so much you can do with that. It can be a line of dialogue. It can be a literal drawing of a line. It can be a line in the sand. There's lots of metaphorical and reason. So you can do what you want, but I think if it's a word that's pretty malleable, then there's more possibilities. If you choose something that's too malleable, then you're not going to have any fun with it. If you say, all right, one of my words is going to be and, if you use like 3 conjunctions, maybe that might be too, there's not really a lot of meat there to play with. You want something that resists a little bit. Okay. If that helps. So yeah, Build Your Own Labyrinth is the name of the course this course I'll be offering. And you'll see in the course of these slides what where that title comes from. And again, if you're trying to concentrate and just want to like mute it at this point, this is all going to be on YouTube later, so you can go back and watch it another time. So one thing I figured out early on as a cartoonist is that comics from the get-go are built out of a lot of constraints. You have, the page format that you're working on, a rectangular shape. Certainly when Tom and I started, when there wasn't really internet stuff, it was just paper, rectangular, could be horizontal or vertical. And because of the reading path of comics, and language, it usually has some kind of grid format that you need to break up the images. And especially if you look at early newspaper comics, a lot of them have this very rigid, grid structure to help you through the reading path. And when you think about it that way, and the grid especially, you start to recognize that as a pattern in all kinds of art. So like turn this grid on its side and it starts to look like a camera viewfinder, and you start to recognize things that have become very, popular, and like YouTube tutorials and things like that, like the rule of thirds, that are ways of like organizing images in space, whether it's from traditional painting, dividing up landscape, or even TV shows. It's like one reason, for example, why you have that offset, framing of things, shows like The Office, or Mr. Robot is another show that uses that a lot, for example. And taken to an extreme, as it was in sort of high modernism, an artist like Pete Mondrian would make that the grid, and stripping out everything else but that, and like the primary colors and black and white, the sort of subject of art all by itself. So what we're doing here today is what I call a creative constraint. It's not one of the built-in constraints like the grid or the page format or working in black and white. I think of it as the joy of painting yourself into a corner and then trying to get out of it. So we're doing a Tarina comic where we're making ourselves reuse these three elements 3 times in a very specific order on one page. Another example of a creative constraint, in other words, that no one's telling you have to do this. You decide to do this for some cockamamie reason. Ed Subitsky was a cartoonist who had a lot of comics back in the National Lampoon back in the 70s and 80s. It was 1977. And kind of on his own was coming up with these weird structures for making comics. So this is again, this is getting into more R territory, so we won't linger on it, but acrostic comics, where you looks like a regular comic book page, but if you start reading it in any direction, you'll see the little guidelines saying that one direction it becomes young Isaac Newton, another way it becomes Scotland Yard casebook. So he tweaks the dialogues because every panel gets read at least twice to come up with a different kind of story. So that's just kind of like, why would you do that? Well, because it's fun and because it can lead to surprising results. So again, this is different from everyday constraints of format, of genre, and mortality. So we talked about the paper we work on in comics in particular. Up until really only 20 years ago or so, all of us worked in the same basic materials of ink and either brush or pen on Bristol board or heavy paper, which was then printed usually on very cheap paper. And that affected the way that the lines were drawn, that affected the way color was used. So in a wonderful example like this H.G. Peters Wonder Woman page, it almost was like experimental art because there were so many rules he had to follow to have this stuff look good. I'm sure he was able to do a more nuanced cross-hatching style, but because of the cheap newsprint and the fact that it was going to be printed in these bold, flat, very coarse colors, he developed this almost woodcut-like style. And as other artists did at the same time. So this has become what we think of as like classic, Silver Age, Golden Age comic book style. But it wasn't just a creative choice. It was also because of the constraints built into reproduction technology at that time. So the kind of book that you're going to be in, whether it's a mini comic or a hardcover book, all of these things are going to affect the way you work. You also have to respect basic rules of reading patterns. You can't just put the panels anywhere on the page. If you want a reader to follow what you're doing, there's a certain number of paths and rules that you have to try and follow. And of course, deadlines and having to deliver stuff to publisher, those are other kinds of constraints that could all be helpful. We all know that as much as we hate deadlines, sometimes when you have to deliver something, like I'm asking you to deliver a one-page comic in 20 minutes, that can be very motivating and it can be very rewarding, especially when you're doing it for fun and not because it's a higher job that you got to turn in to pay the rent. So comics from the very get-go has featured a lot of formal playfulness, and a lot of that has to do with artists giving themselves rules to follow. So in early Winsor McCay comics like Little Nemo and Dream of a Rarebit Fiend, you see him using like the same framing in each panel, for example. So you can't really, all he can do is play around with what's happening in that sort of fixed angle frame. But he comes up with all kinds of like it lets them do morphing and things like that were pretty advanced at the time. Gustav Verbeek was a Dutch, I think Dutch-born American cartoonist who had these insane upside down comics, which I'm not going to get into right now, except to say, like, if you look at the very last panel, you'll see choppy water, and you read the story to a certain point, and then you actually have to flip the newspaper upside down, and you read it again upside down. So the choppy water now becomes a flight of birds that are flying towards the characters, right? So that's a very complicated way to think about writing. Even in superhero comics, someone like Neil Adams, this is a page from a character called Dead Man, where he uses multiple, it's actually based a little bit on Salvador Dali's paranoid critical method, where you can have more than one image in one drawing. So you can see the full page shows a skull, but each panel, as you zoom in, is a standalone image. So the cheek is actually a little ice cavern with the character walking around in it. By the 70s, with underground comics, artists became more familiar with actual critical, rather avant-garde practices. So Art Spiegelman in the 70s did a lot of amazing formal experiments where he played around with pushing the limits of comics language. The paranoid critical method from Salvador Dali. So this is a comic where he took a newspaper strip of Rex Morgan, MD, and he pasted it up on a giant board and then drew all kinds of surreal stuff outside it, expanding it literally into a new kind of fever dream of a comic. Again, the repetition we saw in Winsor McKay, Robert Crumb has used that, not really thought of as a experimental cartoonist, but he really plays around with the form a lot in his work. So these constraints that we're playing around with are arbitrary, but deliberate. And the more surprising they are, the more random. That's why I like the idea that someone found a random word generator. Because again, if you're doing funny animal comics and someone tells you, well, you have to come up with 3 elements. And you're like, oh, I got it. A pig, a rooster, and a horse. It's like, well, yes, technically that's following the rule, but you're not really pushing yourself out to the limit. So to do a funny animal comic with no animals in it, for example, that sounds very interesting to me. That's the kind of thing I like to see. So I mentioned early on my first book, the book I'm most known for, 99 Ways to Tell a Story, Exercise and Style. This is the book that working on it got me permanently locked in to the idea of constraints and a sort of more conceptual approach to making comics. It was inspired by a book by a French writer named Raymond Queneau, and he was inspired actually in turn by a performance of Johann Sebastian Bach's Art of the Fugue. Art of the Fugue, a fugue is a piece of music that is based on a simple melody that is played over and over again in different settings at different speeds, kind of stretched out or played backwards, played in the bass clef with the harmony on the top, all kinds of variations. After seeing this concert, Raymond Queneau had this idea with his friend that, it would be cool to do this in prose. And that's Exercise and Style is 99 short stories telling the same story from different points of view. And it's a lot to get into, but I will, actually, I'm just going to keep moving here. We'll switch to my comic version because I had a similar experience then to Queneau seeing the Bach concert. I discovered Queneau's book and I thought this would be a really cool project to adapt to comics because we have the same kind of language rules to play with, but obviously we also have drawing style to play with and the structural elements of comics. So again, even with what you guys are doing now, this Tarina comic, part of the reason it works is that you're using those 9 panels in a grid. And again, if you decide to break that rule and do something different with it, I'll be delighted. But that starting point is very helpful to work against. And it's a tool that you can really play with that's very particular element of comics. So I'll go quickly through this. If you haven't seen this book before, it's a 1-page comic, okay, like Queneau's 1-page story. And this is sort of my template that the rest of the story is based on. So you got a guy sitting in a room. He gets up and puts the computer to sleep, walks into the next room. Somebody asks him what time it is. He answers. and opens the refrigerator door as the character thanks him. And he looks in the refrigerator and realizes he's forgotten what he was looking for. Right. So it's sort of a non-story, barely counts as an anecdote. But those 8 panels become my template that I start to remix and retell in different ways. So maybe for example, from the point of view of the character through the eyes of that main character, or pushing it into the more absurd realm from the point of view of the refrigerator. This is actually one of the last of the 99 ones that I came up with. And what I like about all this stuff is like, it can sound a little, rational and mathematical, but it's also a way to access an absurdity that you don't normally get. You would never think to tell a story from inside a refrigerator, for example. But this is what this kind of pushed me towards. Using all the colors of the rainbow, multiplying the character by 1 each time, doing pastiches of different styles and traditions, like the old EC horror comics, Jack Kirby, manga, and even pushing the limits of what normally is considered a comic. So in what ways, I ask myself, is a map like a comic? While you tell a story about a character moving from one place to another, and hoping not to end up in the desert of what the hell was I looking for anyway. So as I wrote this book, I learned more about Raymond Queneau, the author of it. And I learned that a few years after he published that book, he started a group called Oulipo, the Workshop of Potential Literature, which he founded with a mathematician, polymath friend of his named François Le Lyonnais. And they were dedicated to meeting, and the group still exists. These guys both died in the 70s, but it's still a very vital group. They meet every month and they drink red wine in Paris, and they come up with ideas for new constraints and share work that they've been working on. And their project is to come up with stuff like this, like a Turina, for example, which is something that they have adopted from Marie Ponceau, and other poetry forms. And they're almost like cataloging these things like librarians or monks or something, saying these are all tools that you can use as an artist to make your own kinds of works. Raymond Queneau is supposed to have said, and here's where you'll see where the title of my spring course comes from, that Oulipians are rats who propose to build the maze from which they plan to escape. Good question from Patricia here. What happens to the last line using all 3 in the 9-panel form? I'm going to make that little bonus assignment, because you're right that I cut that out in the Turina form. If you remember, there was the 3 stanzas using all 3 lines, which is what we're doing in the comic. But there is this last line called an envoy in poetry lingo, where all 3 panels all 3 words are used in one line. If you want to try to incorporate that, 2 suggestions. One would be to do another page, like a splash page, using all 3 elements together somehow. Maybe something faster and more in scale to that is to do a little strip along the bottom. Like if you've ever seen the old Crazy Cat Sunday pages or Tony Millionaire's Mackey's, often has like a little mini strip that runs along the bottom. That's a sort of a gag strip that sort of comments on the rest of the action. So that's 2 ideas, but it's totally up to you. My thought was, given our time constraints, especially, to just like drop that particular element. But I would love to see some people try to incorporate that little envoy. So again, that would be using the ABC elements one last time, probably in that ABC order. That's what Marie Ponceau did. But there's wiggle room there. And in poetry, there's dialogue about what the correct order of that last envoy is. But I'll show you two examples of Oulipo writing. One that's very simple, and I encourage you to play around with if you're interested in the writing side of this stuff, is a kind of poem called A Snowball. And it's kind of is what it sounds like, which is that you start with one letter and you work up from there to get something like, I am the text which begins sparely, assuming magnitude, constantly perceptibly proportional, incorporating unquestionable incrementations. So you got this pyramid-like snowballing shape of gradually growing words, expanding by one letter. You can also go back down and call that a melting snowball. You can do an avalanche. There are all kinds of variations you could do. So it's a very simple idea, but very productive. Timothy writes, one of my printmaking teachers, when we were complaining about all the process and obstacles, says constraints are good for the brain. So work with them instead of against them. Yes, good advice from your printmaking teacher. Georges Perec is probably the best known writer of this whole Oulipo group. And when people talk about constraints in literature in Oulipo, they often think about him. And in particular, a book he wrote called La Disparition, The Disappearance. There's actually an English adaptation of it called A Void. And that's a 350-page mystery novel written without the letter E. And I'm just going to move on from that. But if that sounds appealing to you, look into it. It's a really incredible work. And much more than just a parlor game, the things he does with it. So at the same time that I was discovering Kano and constraints, I became aware through my friend Tom Devlin that there was a group in France called UBAPO, the Workshop of Potential Comics, that was applying some of the ideas for comics, which I was already doing because I was working on the exercise and style comics. So that really kind of galvanized me. I got in touch with them, and they published the French edition of Exercise and Style. And I lived in France from 2012 to 2016 on a residency in Angoulême, the town of the great comics festival, and was able to do some performances with them. We did some like live, shows, and collaborated on a bunch of projects together. It was very exciting. So the UBAPO work runs the gamut from, one-page experiments like this palindrome by François Ayrault. And some of this is actually a translation of mine, which maybe we can share the link for. It's on the Words Without Borders site. Kilofer. This is another acrostic one. This one is I like this one. It's very poetic. You can read this in any direction, really. You can almost read any panel. And it's almost like the refrigerator magnet, poetry, where you can just kind of rearrange it and it comes up with a sort of poetic, romantic comic page. They also do stuff like taking an entire Tintin album and removing every panel that doesn't have, except for the panels where there's an exclamation point or a question mark above the head. So you end up with a one-page comic with this kind of very different take on Tintin. Instead of being in charge and always solving problems, he's this befuddled little guy, completely confused by his strange surroundings. Jochen Gerner took Tintin in America, and he took just like a black marker to it, and he blacked out the whole book, leaving just the little abstract shapes. And he calls it TNT in America. So even the name Tintin gets reduced to TNT. And it's kind of this fever dream vision of like Al Capone and gangsters and America in the pre-Depression era. It's also, crossed over into like children's comics. So this is a book by Louis Trondheim and Sergio Garcia, which has not been translated into English, but it's called The Three Paths, and it's got three paths running through the book, and characters are walking, you're sort of reading in timelines almost across the page. There's a woman named Rebecca Dart, is that her name? Who had a book called Rabbit Head that had a similar, so a lot of these experiments you'll see, once you become kind of aware of it, you'll start seeing people doing very similar work, even if they've never heard of all these artists that I'm talking about. Like, I really think it's built into the language of comics, and especially the kinds of constraints, the kind of formal structure that we have in panels in particular, that makes it really fun to play around with repetition and mirroring and playing around with reading paths. Yesha Na says someone should do a Tintin backing out all the racist tropes. That's something that a Greek artist named Ilan Manwash has done a bunch of interesting conceptual art, taking, for instance, he took Tintin in Congo, which is the most notorious for its racist caricatures, and he had it translated into the main Congolese language and lettered, and actually printed and distributed in the Republic of Congo. So, and he also did another controversial European comic album, which is the Black Smurf from Peyo, where a black Smurf shows up amongst all the blue Smurfs, and it's it just obviously it reads absolutely terribly. So he reprinted the whole book, but only using cyan, right? So these are full color books. If you print the book only in blue, the Smurfs are all blue, including the so-called black Smurf. Like, the color difference is wiped out. So in other words, constraints and conceptual approaches can also be used for political commentary, and there's been some really interesting work done in that that range too. It can also just be silly. Another guy redrew a Tintin album, and with Tintin's pants drawn off. It's just Tintin naked from the waist down. Otherwise, it's the original book with no changes. So let me wrap up here, and then I want to leave plenty of time here to see what you guys have been working on. Why are we using constraints then? Well, partly has to do with the fear of a blank page. When, any artist, even a seasoned artist, I think, is daunted when someone's just like gives you a blank sheet of paper or a blank word processor or a blank canvas and says, or just even a guitar and just says, do something brilliant. You do something really inspired. That's actually really a very stressful and terrifying position to be put in. When you start to add constraints, even a simple formal constraint like putting a box on the page, which is already a box, by the way, but just having that little box there, suddenly you have something to interact with. I've seen this with my undergrad students at SVA, where if I asked them to draw something on a blank sheet of paper, it would just be all over the place. But as soon as I told them, draw a little box on the page, which, by the way, is also a box, but it's still something psychological about it, they start thinking about the space in a different way. So by the same token, when you divide that box into panels, then you start seeing a rhythm there. So a panel grid is kind of like a metronome, and it helps you think about a sort of musical stave idea of visual storytelling. I want a quick other example from another student of mine, Lisa Frubeis. I don't know if she's done any SAW stuff, but I've worked with her in a couple of different contexts. She had a summer assignment to do a weekly strip for a major German newspaper, and she was freaking out because she didn't know what to do. So we worked together for a while, and we played around with haiku, which is another poetry form that I've experimented with. And actually, Tom and my good friend David Lasky had been doing online haiku comics classes for a while now. And over the course of a few weeks, she started adding more and more constraints until at the end, she was doing these haiku every day, where there would be one color. The panel designs were sort of haiku-like as well. She also did some weird stuff, like she wanted to mention what she had for breakfast in each comic, something about the day's news. So this is like something about the Nobel Prize controversy. This is like 2 summers ago, so I don't remember what it's about. And it was a real breakthrough for her. Like the more difficult she made it for herself, the more she was excited with the results. So, because constraints in the end, they're the rules of the game. And we all know that if you play a game with your friends, as soon as someone's like, let's change the rule to make it easier, you lose all sense of fun. You have to have difficult rules for the game to be fun. And I think the same thing goes for a lot of creativity, that the more you kind of lean into that difficulty, the more time you spent immersed in what some people call deep play, kind of lose yourself. And I hope some of you have been experiencing this for the last 20 minutes, where you've been tuning me out completely. And maybe just now you're saying, wait, he's still talking? Because you start wrestling with the problem in front of you. I hope you're not worrying about like, oh, is it good enough? Is the drawing good or not? No, you're just like, all right, I've got these 3 elements. They're supposed to be in this very particular order. How am I going to make this work? How am I going to do this in 20 minutes? And everything else kind of melts away, and you just focus on that problem at hand. And I'd love to hear if any of you managed to get into that headspace of being like totally absorbed. There's another term that's escaping my mind right now, but of deep play, of deep focus in your work. We can maybe come back to this. This would be fun to look at later, but this is another variation on the Tarina idea, but I want to make sure we have time to look at your work. So I'm going to skip through this and yeah, well, I can bring this up again, or you can take a little screen grab if you want. This is some of my social media and website. I also have a mailing list, which I encourage you to join up. There's a very legible, mini URL to use. But all right, so while you look at that, I'm going to check actually, I'm going to stop my share. And check. Someone's complimenting on my name and all of its doubles. It's really cool. And it's funny that when I was a kid, I thought Matt Madden was a really dumb name and I didn't like it. And over the years, and I think I went by Matthew when I was younger. And it wasn't until I became Matt Madden, which I didn't choose. Just in college, people just started calling me Matt instead of Matthew, and it just stuck. And at a certain point, I was like, wow, it's a really cool name. And then later I got into sort of constraints and wordplay and stuff. I'm like, yeah, 2 M's, 2 D's, 2 T's, 2 E's, if you can include the Matthew. I did a talk at at like a high school in France a few years ago, and talking about my work, and we opened up for questions, and someone were like, how do you get a book published? What do you need to draw comics? And then this one kid was like, is Matt Madden your real name? So yeah. Jeannie says, getting lost in our work is called bright moments in jazz. That's nice. Going around a brilliant corner. Flow state, yeah, getting into flow, yeah, great. Melting away, that's all great. Yeah, Susan knows Lisa. All right, so how are you guys doing? Anyone have any? So obviously, if you're still working on it, just keep working on it. I think we can just get people. If people have stuff they're ready to show. At this point, they can.
They can definitely hold it up,
right? So
I don't show very often, but if you don't mind, I'll start because
that'd be great. Yeah,
maybe it'll free people up because it looks pretty lousy, but it was done in a panic state. Like I was like not going to not do it. And I had 20 minutes. I was just going to push through. So I'll show you. Actually, I'll spotlight myself, and then we'll go to Jen, Sammy, Erica, and Aleph and see if we can keep going right here. Great. So I chose icon, hand, and tree. And so there's like this sort of icon thing. And then see, look how bad the drawings are. Nothing, this hand with a sort of sharp knife and then carving the icon into the tree, right? Then the third tier or second tier is walking away from the trees. But I tried to show that the icon had been put down and put in on each tree with a little shape. Anyway, it says this is the same icon, but now it is in a sort of signage.
Crossing.
Sort of, yeah. In retrospect, I would have put danger, but I think crossing is good enough. And the hand up's supposed to be sort of like a fear. I was making this up as I went along.
I get that.
Close up of the hand again, cutting. And what is he doing? Then we see the tree. So now we're on hand tree. And then because he's cut down the tree, and actually that little symbol is on there somewhere. Anyway,
yeah.
Now he's become an icon of the community. There you go. And then
nice.
Just as you were saying in the thing about the last panel, I thought, oh, what if he had the felled tree as a tattoo on his hand as he's holding up the icon? But that was sort of last second. So
cool. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Yeah.
So yeah, thanks. That was a lot of fun. And awesome. Really, really panicky. Right.
Yeah, so well, I mean, yeah, it's a fairly tight, time. I actually had a more complicated constraint, and I was like, you know what, this is like one page with 9 panels is good enough with the 3 elements. So
definitely.
Anyway, great stuff. All right, so who's up next here? Jen.
Hey.
Hi, Jen.
Hey. So here, I'll show you in a second, and then I'll read it. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, I'm in bed, and I just moved, so I don't have many places to sit, and the bed is squishy.
Okay.
So here we go. It starts with an alligator, a bear, and a cherub are walking through the woods. My constraints were just the letters because I'm lazy, but I wanted to do it.
Okay, I would say you're doing it just the first letter. So your ABC.
Just the first letters.
Okay, so otherwise you can change it. Oh, that's interesting. That's a good variation on it. Sure.
Okay. So an alligator, a bear, and a cherub are walking through the woods. The bear said, "I'm hungry." The cherub said, "I'm thirsty." The alligator said nothing because alligators can't talk. The bear said, "Hey, Albert, want a snack?" to the alligator. The alligator sticking his thumb up. The cherub said, "Hey, Albert, want a beer?" Albert still said nothing, but the bear found a pub. See the bear with the star in his eyes? They're all happy. At the pub, Albert and the bear had a little cherub with their beers. And the bear is saying, "I love wings." And he's got a foot in his mouth.
Boy, this is going dark.
And then they washed the cherub down with an allagash.
Nice.
Thank you.
Which is a brand of IPA or something, right? Allagash.
Yeah, it's a wheat beer.
Okay, that took a very surprising turn in the end there. So very cool.
Thanks, Jen. We'll go to Sammy next.
Yeah, and so that's a good example of how you can take a constraint and make it your own as you go. So I think that was a good solution there, just using it as a kind of alphabetical prompt for each panel. Yeah. So hey, Sammy.
Hi. I signed up for the class. So okay.
Oh, great. Oh wow, look at that.
Tarina, so it says the rain poured, it was sudden. Okay. The tears did the same.
Why don't you actually before you read, can you tell us what the repeating elements are?
So we have rain, tears, and realm.
Wow. Okay. And then the colors too are following the pattern: blue, yellow, and red.
Blue, yellow, red, and then we also have an umbrella and eye and the tears and a heart.
Oh, very nice. You took it to heart.
Yeah. So the rain poured, it was sudden. The tears did the same, they were not sudden. Both seemed to gush from a hidden realm. The realm pumped emotion. The rain seemed endless, the tears finite. The tears stretched A to B. They came from the broken realm and ended there. The rain stopped. And then I added the rain and tears from my own emotional rain. So
beautiful. Can you hold it up for a minute? Just can you just hold it up for a minute so we can all see the whole thing?
Yeah.
A minute. Oh yeah. That's really great, Sammy.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I love how you're like adding stuff on there. So you did a color, an image, and a word repeating each time. And did you find that it doesn't seem like that stymied you? It seems like it kind of inspired you to
very much, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how that repetition, I love repetition in art, and I feel like like in music it's built into it. But in a poetry form like this, like the Trina or the Sestina, which is a longer version involving 6 repeating words, that repetition, it's funny how often it comes back to a very melancholy state of mind. When cherubs aren't being eaten, of course, but it depends on the context. But that was a really lovely. It had a bit of the similar mood I felt to the living room poem that we read at the beginning there from Marie Ponsard. Yeah, good. All right, let's keep moving here. Who's next?
Yeah, Matt, we've got a lot of hands up. So here we go.
Okay,
Erica is next.
Hi, Erica. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you too. This was great. So I have a bear. My words are bear, sun, and donut.
Okay.
And so the bear's holding his tummy and it's grumbling. Mm-hmm. There's the bear's little house and the sun's rising and a tree. And then the bear is daydreaming about a donut and says, And then you see the donut not happy. And the bear is licking his lips.
Yeah.
And then the sun is rising. And then the sun's setting. And the donut is running. Huff. And then the bear is chasing the donut still. It's grumble still.
Nice. So you said you have a bear character. Is this a character that you use regularly, or did you just invent this for this comic?
I just invented it for this comic.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's great. So again, the idea of taking even something like a funny animal comic and giving a donut in there, I don't know if you knew at the beginning that the donut was going to have to be anthropomorphic to make it a story, but it's kind of cool how it becomes a chase scene between a bear and his breakfast. So very nice. Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right,
Eric.
Who's next?
Nicole is next. There we go.
Okay, I think I'm it. My 3 words are dream, glass, and hair. And I don't know if these shapes will show up, but this is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, she came to me in my dream last night. Tap, tap, a bird, a sound on the window, on the glass window. But it wasn't a bird. It was a girl in a swirl of dark hair. Standing just a hair's breadth from me, waiting. I wouldn't dream of scaring her away, but what did she need from me? Maybe she'd like a glass of water. And then the last three, I don't remember the words. No, she only looks at me with glassy eyes. Rip, I'm so unsure. I did that one without repeating the word hair because I couldn't think of another thing for hair to mean. Oh, I see. Rest, little one.
Yeah, but she's pulling her hair, so that works.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then the last one is her sort of sleeping in my lap.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. A bit of a almost ghost story kind of feel to it. So yeah, absolutely. Like swapping out the word for a drawing or an action or an image, those are all great solutions to repeating it. Now, it looked like, were you also repeating some of the visual elements in there, or is it just the fact that there's all this?
Yeah,
it seemed like the swirly hair shape was.
Yeah. I was trying not to get too, matchy on it, but I did try to like at least follow the line of like this line into the jaw line into the arm line.
That's nice.
So yeah, that was really helpful.
Thank you. Noticed that. That's great. Cool.
Awesome. Thanks,
all
Nicole.
Right,
Walter next. Here we
go. So my words are Bell, Book, and Candle, and it's mostly a wordless comic, so it should work if I just go panel by panel. That would be a good test to see. So if I can, whoops, got to start with Bell, right?
Center a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. So alarm bell going off. Looks like a calendar, like an appointment book. Someone's arriving on Wednesday. Lighting a candle. Okay. Then walking down the hall with the candle. I hope you don't mind I'm narrating this, but the phone bell rings. And there's a click. I can't quite see what he's clicking there. Is that
He's opening a book and a pen.
Yeah, opening the book, and that's a pen.
Okay, gotcha. And then we see the book again with the word rival crossed out. It's going to get sad. The candle blown out. And the church bell at night, and he's gone back to bed. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, just kind of an evocative moment of again, sort of a poetic, mist. One thing you can do in this kind of, and in general, in single page comics, and I do believe that when you work with a constraint like this, it can force you into these kind of situations narratively, where that almost feels like that famous, Ernest Hemingway 3-line novel thing of the, baby shoes for sale, baby shoes never worn. There's so much you can compress into a 1-page comic or even a comic strip. And I do think that the repetition of elements in something like this Tarina form pushes you in that sort of poetic, lyrical direction in some ways. So yeah, very nice. Thank you.
As you said, I don't know why it went to sort of melancholy. It just seems to be something that the form evokes. So
there's definitely something in the form that tends to push us in that direction, I think. But anyway, we've seen some silliness as well. So there's obviously possibilities.
Thanks, Walter. We'll go to Miela Marie next. Here we go. If I pronounce that right.
Hello.
Hi, sorry. Okay. Can you guys see that at all?
Yeah. So
okay,
what are the 3 elements?
My words were meet, pattern, and cook.
Okay.
So it's like basically someone going on a date.
Yeah.
They're saying, hi, nice to meet you. It's really poorly
drawn. Like a table pattern, like a checker pattern in a restaurant.
Yeah, I'm picturing like a pattern in a restaurant if I were to draw it more. And then it's just a cook with them in the background. And then their food cooking. And her thinking about his meat.
Okay.
And he is saying, my exes are all crazy. He's basically discussing like his relationship patterns.
The pattern of his relationships. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then this one, I felt like it kind of hard to not start blending all the words together. So then they're leaving. And I had like a baseball game, but I think I would rather change that.
Okay.
I don't know why my camera's so
it's
odd. And then
they're in bed together.
They're together. It's too hot. I didn't draw that well. And
That's
then
fine.
the last one has all three with someone is cooking and asking if the other person likes bacon while the other person checks their phone and gets a new message from somebody else that wants to meet.
Oh yeah, meet. Okay, very nice. All right, cool.
Anyway,
a little slice of life story. Great.
Homonyms. Have you seen homonyms before, Matt? Meet and meet. Does that count?
Yeah, does that count?
That's a good solution. Yeah, sure. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll go to Siobhan now. Here we go.
Hi, Siobhan.
Hi, how are you? So my words are coffee, on, and stairs. So I have the first panel, the person's waking up, and it's not really clear here, but her pajama says need coffee. So she turns on the light on. She goes down the stairs. She's in the kitchen with the stairs in the background, making some coffee. She's trying to turn on her computer. And she's saying to herself, why is it not turning on? I could not figure out how to get the stairs in the back in the panel, so I ended up just having like a background thing, but I ended up combining it at the last panel, like her partner basically yelling out from up the stairs saying, is the coffee ready? And she just annoyed with the whole thing. So that's what I have.
So you're saying the second to last panel should have been the stairs, but you couldn't fit it in?
Yeah, yes, and I couldn't figure out how, to make that.
Could the partner have been yelling in the second to last panel, maybe?
Yeah, so I was trying, so I combined like coffee and stairs in the last panel, but I couldn't figure out how to get stairs in the second panel with the coffee.
Yeah.
And stuff to make it in background.
Yeah. All right, cool. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think I'm
really impressed at how many people are having very complete comics done here. It's like not a lot of time to be producing such polished material here. So it's great. All right, who's next?
Kate.
Okay.
Kate.
So my 3 words are mask, COVID, and vodka.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I'm not used to wearing a mask in my own home, but my partner has COVID and I don't want to get it. I had some vodka. Okay, thanks for telling me. And then she's thinking, why would he drink? He has COVID. And then, why vodka? It was hard to read his expression with the mask. My partner's been sober for years, and he never drank vodka. Did having COVID drive him to drink? I tried the babka. Damn this mask.
That's awesome. Is that based on a true anecdote, or is that?
Yes, I wanted to write about the anecdote, and so I just used this to find 3 words that could work.
That's great. Yeah, it works. Again, you're telling a story that really happened, but I think having those 3 words sort of forces it in a certain direction. It has a very pleasing build up to it. I think
I think it made it more fun.
Vodka. Yeah,
it was more fun to tell an already funny exchange.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome, great. Kate. Thanks. We'll go to Shay next. Here we go.
Hi, Shay.
Hi. I really had fun with this assignment here. And so my 3 words were a bear, which just seemed to be
second bear.
Tonight. Yeah.
Oh, this is our 3rd bear. This is our 3rd bear of the evening.
It might be the 3rd bear. Yeah. B is crack and C is plant.
Okay.
I didn't take crack where the other guy took, the line. But maybe that's why it came in my head. I don't know. All right. So I can't bear to watch all those people falling into the cracks.
Nice.
I plant my feet firmly. plant-like roots. Oh my gosh, I can't read. Let me see. That withstand the munching of bears, who crack limbs with gentle fervor, cracking up at the horror planted inside my heart as I watch unbearable truths play out, as I watch them suffer.
Wow, crazy. That becomes a weird sort of nightmare fever dream kind of story.
It is. It got kind of
very cool. And again, using the homonym thing of bear, unbearable, the actual bears, can't bear to look at something. So yeah, really nice use of the suppleness there, or the variability. Thank you.
Thank you.
More darkness. Okay, we'll go to Nina next. Here we go.
Thank you so much. This has been great, Matt. I was totally focused. I hope I can watch the actual slideshow at some point.
Well, yeah, no, it's going to be on the YouTube channel, so you can read
1,000 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just randomly, I mean, other people have done book. I did photo, dream, and book in that order. And
okay.
I don't have this memorized. So it's, I found a book. The image came from a dream. I mean, I found a photo. The image came from a dream. It fell out of a book. The book came from a library that lets you keep a free book, but to keep it, you had to let them take your photo. The photographer said, "You were in my dream. You were also in my dream. That's why I chose this book. And then I'd like you to have this photo."
Wow.
So it goes in a circle, and I didn't know where it was going, but the whole thing, it can actually go all the way around.
Right, because then you'd actually read it in other directions as well, maybe?
Yeah.
I definitely see how it becomes kind of an enclosed loop where like the photo she finds at the beginning is the one from the end. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah. And that just random. Thank you though. That was a really cool exercise.
Oh, great. I'm really glad what you came up with. It's a real like surreal dream logic to it that really makes sense. So very cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, we'll go to Leanne next. I think Leanne will have to come on screen. Let's see.
Hi there.
There we go.
Hi.
Okay, so mine is called Thanksgiving Trina. And my 3 words were veggie, vino, and vibrancy.
Okay.
Okay, so what I was doing was I was trying to find the ingredients for beef bourguignon for Thanksgiving. And I was playing with the vegetables and the wine and the spices that go in it. And so I put, I put in Italian, actually, le carote, carrots, and then vino rosso here, and then le prezzemole, parsley on the other side. And then, the pouring the wine in a glass, and then onions, and then the bay leaf, and then thyme, and the pouring the wine into the pot, I forget the name of that casserole thing you put in, and then the garlic. So I was playing with the colors and the ingredients and all of that. So I don't really have any dialogue or anything, but I enjoyed it though very much. I just like the,
that's great. No, it's like
the idea of the Trina.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Yeah, and I love how you use the colors in it as well. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you. It was very fun. Thank you.
Good,
awesome. Thanks so much. We'll go to Lizzie next.
Lucy.
Hello.
Hi.
I did my dog Oso, myself, and the sun. So it ended up, and I also did ink and a blue pencil and a regular pencil.
Okay, cool.
And I went through time. So it's like morning, evening, night. So morning, I wake up my phone. My dog is deaf. He does not hear it. The sun is coming up over the pond. During the day, I'm in town. I'm driving the truck, listening to music. Also, is maybe waiting at the window. Who knows? I'm not there. And then evening time, he's at the door. Maybe he heard something. The sun is coming down. I'm entering the house. I'm at the door. I hear him barking. So also it did kind of like sound effects through those three.
Yeah, yeah, very nice. I like it's like it becomes a very, just original way to talk about a slice of life everyday memoir comic. Like we were talking about like different reading paths and reading these different ways and acrostics, and when you have those the way you have the panels in different styles, it almost feels like there's three separate strips, and they kind of are, because you're following three different kind of lines. And I like the idea that you can read it as an integrated page, but you can also kind of read the different parts. So very nice.
I like it too when it's kind of making these diagonal patterns. And so if you did a quilt basically of all these different things going on.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, this is a model, like I said, I've mentioned that Tarina is a reduced version of a sestina, which is a 6-panel, 6 word version. So this is something that you can scale up quite a bit, and you could do like a larger project like this using this kind of pattern, or over multiple pages too, and have it kind of zigzag through a book, for example. So yeah, think about it.
Thanks, Lizzie. We'll go to Rick next.
Hello.
Hey, Rick.
You guys know each other? You're both in Philly.
Rick's in Philly, yeah. Rick's the man. Sequential
we
Philly.
Have a Philly cartoonist on this every week, I think. Can we do that? Maybe. No.
Yeah, that'd be good. So yeah, I'll briefly say Rick co-runs a really great Instagram primarily, and also a new website, I guess, coming up called Sequential Philly. If you want to know anything and actually everything about what's happening in comics in Philly, especially in the indie comic scene, check out on Instagram. Really great stuff. Interviews and, signal boosting and so on. Anyway, Rick, let's see your comic.
So we, in a SAW class this month, we had to make a list of 100 nouns. So I went to my list and I picked out crow, tree, and shoe. So I have a crow flies over the tree. There's a shoe at the bottom of the tree. Wind blows the shoe. Crow picks up the shoe and flies over the tree. Tree without the shoe, then the shoe, and then now the crow is living in the shoe. Somehow, I don't know how he would fit, but that's the magic of it, I guess.
But it's your own little world. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I found it challenging when you have all three things in the same panel to make sure like one of them is sort of the prominent thing, so that it kind of gives that rhythm to it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That because sometimes inevitably you're going to use stuff more than once when they're especially in a confined space. So, but I think you pulled that off in the sense that last panel, you're even going across both panels with the sneaker. But clearly the middle panel, emphasizes the sneaker toe, and then the last one really focusing on the crow. So, and again, like with the last one we saw, a very lovely visual pattern with that heavy black of the crow. Diagonally across.
Visually, it's pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah, nice. Great.
Awesome, Rick. Thanks. Okay, Lynn, and then Umi, and then Brady. Let's see. Lynn.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey there. Okay. So I did mine on iPad. And, yes, there, you can see the colors this way. Okay. The words were yes, no, and maybe. And it kind of, the first thing I thought of are, those like acting school exercises. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
No, it's like after me to unmute myself. Yeah, so it's yes, no, and maybe. And it's a story of a little boy, his mom who wants something, mom's no, dad says maybe. Then mom changes her mind, she goes maybe. And dad goes yes. And the boy's like, no, he's upset that there's not, and then dad goes no. She goes maybe. And he goes yes. Whatever it is. So it was cute. It was really fun coming up.
Cool. Yeah, I love the look at I love the patterning. Did you think about that patterning, or was that just more kind of graphic, having the black, diagonal shadows in the background?
Yeah, well, everybody was talking. I thought, okay, I can keep developing this. And so first I threw the colors, and you can't see it's purple, green, and orange in the light. And then I put the black patterns on top just to give it a little.
Oh, it's beautiful. It looks great. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, it's a visual. Yeah, this is like a style that really comes together. It's really dynamic because of the diagonals. We can't really see the colors too well on the screen here, but
no, the colors are they're kind of muted. Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of warning earlier about when you use something like conjunctions, it makes it harder to tell a story. But yes, no, maybe those are very, you could kind of like not end up, you could have trouble coming up with a story that way. But I think you've done a nice job here of, this is certainly a kind of interaction that happens in my household regularly, usually, revolving around more video game time, or can you watch another Simpsons before bedtime, and with my son in particular. So very true to life.
Yeah. Coming off teaching, yes.
Cool.
Reminds me a little of the famous Archie and Veronica story, right, Matt?
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. Yeah, definitely like old, especially for whatever kids comics, Archie's. There's a bunch of Ernie Bushmiller, like Nancy strips too, where they have like one word. What's the Archie one you're thinking of? There's like a famous one from that where it's like,
yeah, well, it's the love triangle, but the only two words in the entire comic are Archie and Veronica, and they're said with different intonations and different. Yeah. They mean different things each panel. Yeah, it's good.
Right. Yeah, which is a whole different constraint. Like, how much can you do? There's this famous Wire scene from The Wire where Bunk and McNulty are on a crime scene, and it's like a 8-minute long scene, and the only dialogue is the F word.
Yeah.
But they have this whole conversation around the corpse. They're like F, like over and over again. It's actually really amazing. So yeah, strength and limitation once again.
Forgot all about that one. All right, we're gonna go to Umi next, and then Brady, then Michael Wu, and then Michael Ashton.
Hi. Sorry, like there's a construction just in front of my house, so you may not hear me. Do you hear me?
Okay.
So
I'm used to that.
There's a truck and chicken and sailboat.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any word, as you can see. And
okay.
This is the truck. Oh, this is the truck.
Uh-huh.
And here's the chicken, rotisserie chicken in the middle. And there's not a sailboat yet, but there's a house. I took a chance that the sailboat, well, the house, and then there's a strong wind blows the house up, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a truck, and you can see from the structure, this is actually the Japanese military truck.
Okay.
And because of the wind and all these things, the chickens in the trucks, I don't know how come the military trucks have chickens inside, but the chickens go, hey, hey, hey. And chickens comes alive. Anyways, and you see this is the sailboat part. When you see the roof of a house, and if you flip it, the house is like the roof is made to
it's like a boat. Yeah.
So yeah, it becomes a sailboat. And the very last panel here, you see the truck is flipped. Oh my God. The house is
that's
flipped.
Good. We can hear.
And yeah, it's ocean everywhere, and the chicken is escaping to the sailboat.
Lovely. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so I think that's totally fine to have the first panel be a house, because you're almost doing like a misdirection there to the readers, where you're like, wait, I thought it was going to be a sailboat. It says truck, chicken, sailboat, but you have to read the story to see how the house is actually a sailboat. So very cool. I like it.
It was really an interesting exercise. It was a challenge. So I had to go to the Miskes, whatever the object generator. So it was really helpful, and I want to work on that. Thank you.
Great. And I also like how you really also limited yourself to really just drawing those objects. There's not a lot of extra detail. There's not a lot of backgrounds. It's just the truck, the chicken, the boat in each panel. So that you made it harder for yourself that way, but it looks great.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on.
Thanks, Umi. We'll go to Brady next. Let's see. Oh, and I think you're muted, Brady.
Sorry about that. All right, so I think what am I, number 6? One of my words is bear.
Bear, here we go, yeah.
I looked around the room to see what objects, and there's my daughter's teddy bear was over there. So anyways, the other words are globe and mug. So the first one, obviously, there's a guy's mug there. And then he's sort of a thinker and he's in the globe. And, then he's, kind of reverting to childhood or something. And then he has a nightmare kind of thing. He starts drinking, so there's the glove. and then the globe turns into a snow globe. I did a circumstance, and then there's global issues, a missile about to hit the earth, and then he kind of loses it. And I hope I'm not bear, with a barrel. So I put two L's at the end of bear, and then he ends up in the cop shop there. So
yeah, well, it might actually be, to me, that's pushing it a bit from bear to barrel, but I think you could fix it easily by just using bear, and maybe he's naked, like so he's running naked through the street.
But then I made the jump from, he's bear with the bear with a barrel.
Bear with the barrel. Yeah, okay, that works certainly. I mean, he is bear, so you have that. So sure.
All right. So that's
nice. Love this.
Very cool.
We don't have enough Cyclopses in these comics, though.
Yeah.
Cyclopses. All right, we'll go to Michael Wu next.
Thanks. I was nervous in the beginning, but eventually I found the constraints to be empowering. So what I did was I chose 3 sets of words that sound similar. One set was appear, a pair, and ap ear. The other set was bow and bowl and elbow. And the third set was car, cart, and carter. So this is what I drew. Let's see if I don't know if I can read this very well. Aaron had sharp eyes and an incisive mind, leading him to understand that things are not always as they appear. Sorry,
other way. There we go.
One night, getting ready to go out, he put on his bow tie. His car and driver were waiting for him. But a cart blocked his egress.
Okay.
And the owner of the cart was distracted by a pair in the street. So, let's see. Sorry. Whoops.
I think other way, I think. There you go. A little bit more.
To get through the gathering crowd on the sidewalk, Aaron had to elbow his way.
Nice.
But Aaron tripped on a bowl on the ground. And then the next two, which I didn't get to, the next one is going to involve Carter. And then the last one is going to be app ear. So I haven't figured out how to do it.
App ear.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting spin on the constraint of doing kind of similar sounding words. That's a really interesting variation. Because it makes it more, you're using the constraint, but you're also building in more variation, I think. So it ends up, I think it's useful to see the words, circled as you go. But I think when you're done, I would want to see you erase that and just have it be, see how it reads as a normal 1-page comic. But really cool idea.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Michael, thanks. And we'll go to the other Michael, Ashner. Michael often has me read it. Do you want me to read it, Michael Ashner? Or do you want to read it? Yeah? All right. Let's see. Get that thing in focus. Oh, we got red, yellow, and blue. That'll help. And we got fear, loss, and bat. Okay. So fear is the first one with this scared look. Oh, and then loss, this dejected sort of fella. And then this bat appears. Interesting. Okay. Second tier, the bat is upside down. The character is very fearful of this. And now in the second tier, the character has lost a shoe. We got a lot of things to tie up in this last tier. Let's see what happens. Okay. Oh, so much loss. It's like Oedipus there. He's lost his eyes. The bat flies into the moon. and and he is fearful in that last panel. He doesn't have his sock or his shoe. I don't know what that music is. But I think I've lost the connection about, maybe Michael can explain, or maybe Matt seeing it, what the...
I was just drawing the things. I wasn't thinking about the connection.
I was wondering if there was a particular reason he was afraid in that final panel, like, because it seemed like the bat was flying away.
I almost feel like it could be resolved with the character at the end, instead of cowering beneath the bat, like running in the opposite direction with one shoe on. This idea that he's so scared that he's not going to wait to look for his missing, shoe. He's just going to run off and give into his fears. But yeah, it looks great. I love how the color really reinforces the theme. And again, the red in the color and image you choose, I think we're seeing in a bunch of these for that first A element is really important because it tends to give you a very strong diagonal pattern through the page. And when it's red or when it's like dark shadows, that's a really powerful storytelling tool, I think. So
I wasn't thinking at all about a connecting narrative. This was all random, except
just standalone images.
Except that then I sort of kept the one shoe off and one shoe on. That was the only thing that kind of stuck. But I just drew and tried not to think at all, which felt really nice. That's
great. Yeah, no, it works as a kind of suite of drawings. But I mean, since we're humans, we're always looking for stories and stuff. And I think to me, it like the third to last panel of just the close up on what Tom called the Oedipus image. It would take me a while longer to decide how that fits in the story exactly, but it definitely holds up as a kind of one page, even if it's just like sort of like a dream comic kind of thing. But really great. Thanks.
Awesome, Michael. Thanks. And Matt, we're going really long, and you might want to decide how many more you want to take. We have
how many more people we got waiting here?
14 people still have their hands up.
Well, let's just do it, but let's just keep moving here, okay?
Okay, all right. So we'll go to Aspen next. Once Aspen
not get to share their stuff after waiting this long.
Thanks. All right, there we go.
Hello.
Hi.
So I did. My A was feeling, my B was object, and C was text. So there's my feeling. I guess you can't really see the object.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to read the red on red on the screen here, but
yeah. Well, there's kind of like a spliff and a lighter and a windowsill, and then texting. There's no text yet, and then some text. Says bean, I'm hungry, and then the person with the lips is the feeling, and then the object is a frog, and that's as far as I got.
Oh, cool. It looks it's a great start. I mean, it's looks like you're sort of painting a portrait of a moment, kind of a slice of life kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like to kind of have to take the panels out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, visually it has a more open kind of feel, almost like a single image, sort of a free-floating thing, which is nice as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Cool, thanks. We'll go to Ayla next.
Hey everybody. I have turtle, watch, and quit. Am I backwards? Am I mirrored?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, cool. I think on my screen it's mirrored. Anyways, we start with the turtle. We have someone who is watching the turtle, and then she quits watching the turtle, says bye to the turtle. She's got to go do something. Quit. She's quitting whatever she was wearing and changing clothes. Puts on a turtleneck. Then her watch goes off because she has to be somewhere. But she kind of doesn't really want to go there, maybe, and sits down and maybe watches something on her phone, like TikTok or something. And then so the blue one I did last, and it was sort of like fitting a square peg into a round hole, but I think I kind of confused the words quit and cancel, but anyway, she cancels her plans and then continues to sit on her couch and turtles inside of her home instead of going out into the world.
Nice. Hiding in her shell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah, cool.
I did notice it was hard to fit the last part in. Like the last part that I did, it was hard to get it conceptually to make sense.
Yeah, and you can come back to it later. Sometimes there's like a solution that you put it away for a day, and you come back like, oh, I got something that'll work it out. Where maybe she's quitting from her job instead of just maybe it's about going to work instead of a dinner date, or something like that, or seeing friends or whatever. So there's definitely possibilities there, and I like the color. In this case, the color is more like just like a pattern kind of thing because they're very similar tones. It just gives a nice visual rhythm to it, I think.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Keisha Roddick. Let's see. They want to come on screen. There we go.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
This is a story about Mama, her babies, and the bird. Well, it's a sweet spot. Okay. Sister, will you play with me? Shoo, bird, shoo. Girls, don't go far. Listen to me, don't go far. We are so far away. Sister, so far, we are lost. Mama, Mama. Sister, let us follow the bird. Girls, where are you? Oh, my dears. There's a little bird there.
Awesome. That's very sweet.
I like it to have a feeling. I like it to have a feeling,
Yeah, for sure. Very nice.
Really nice. Cool. Thanks. Let's go to Hannelore next.
So building this little cabin, and I have to finish up the electrical part soon.
Mm-hmm.
My words were mug, ground, and lie.
Okay.
I'm nervous about the wiring. That's my silly, nervous mug there.
Mm-hmm. So it's our second. This is our second mug word, at least.
I know. I noticed that, and it's the second mug as a face too.
Yeah.
You have to ground everything properly. That's the electrical panel with all the wires sticking out.
Right.
I said I knew what to do, but it was a lie. I get the lie of the land by watching Benjamin's channel.
YouTube to the rescue.
Yes. He's no mug when it comes to electricity. He knows his volts from his amps. He makes me feel grounded. And then, this surface looks inviting as the ground. And then there I am lying on it.
Yeah.
And I'm still thinking about the electricity. So I'm chanting, Om.
Right. Nice.
And then I'll start right after coffee, which I'm drinking from a mug.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm totally going for the extra points here because I did the last line, and it's a haiku.
Oh boy, bonus.
Yeah. Inhale muggy steam. Feed the worms with the spent grounds. Wiring lies in wait.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, very nice. I hadn't even thought of that, but that's a great use of that last little space, a little haiku as a kind of summary / commentary on the story. Very nice.
This was so
Awesome,
much
Hannah
fun.
Laura. Thanks
Oh,
so
good.
much.
I'm glad.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks.
we'll go to Mary next. See if Mary's there. Mary, there she is. Oops.
Yeah, I'm here. So, yeah, I can't draw and create narrative at the same time. I'm working on that, but right now I just don't have that skill set. So, okay, my words were pants, paintbrush, and sunglasses. So I don't know about anybody else, but I have paint pants, and which double as a place to just like get rid of your extra paint. So getting up in the morning, putting on my paint pants and starting to work on something, and, you know, got to get some paint off my brush. And I'm by a window and the sun is so bright, I have to wear shades. Nice. And then oh, wait. Oh, then I am taking, I don't know right from left here. I'm taking my shades off because the clouds are coming. And then I'm going, oh, geez, these pants, they're just covered with paint. They look terrible. And, but I'm back at it and I'm shoving the paint brushes in my back pocket, as one does. And then I am, let's see, I'm cleaned up for the day, laid my paint brushes out. I can put my sunglasses back on. And I've hung up my paint pants because I'm out for the day. So
that's great. That's
a little bit of a
story in there.
narrative.
Yeah, it's slice of life, you know, it's observational. It's kind of like almost like a self-portrait. You could think of it as, you know, a self-portrait in panels, like a, you know,
yeah,
whatever
typical...
the nine version of a triptych would be.
Yeah,
a non-iptych maybe.
It's like a typical Saturday for me.
Yeah, totally. No, it has a very nice, just, you know, again, slice of life, that observational quality to it. It's very nice. Thank you.
And very hastily drawn.
Yeah, it looks great. I
Thanks,
like
Mary.
the colors.
We'll go to Emily.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Oh, gotta reopen it. All right. Let's see. My words were, how do you get it in focus? Okay. Closer? Sorry. This is my first time.
I think you might have your light filter, the blur out filter, and it's taking that as a background. You could turn that off maybe.
The closer, yeah.
Right. Okay, I'll unput. Okay, so my words were marshmallow, ant, and boy. So the first panel's putting a marshmallow on. Then I made the ant really probably too small, but the second one is ant. Then the boy sees the ant, but the boy is looking at his delicious marshmallow. Puts up on the marshmallow. The ant says, he wants the marshmallow. And then he's super excited about the fire and the marshmallow. And the boy tries to eat the marshmallow while it's on fire. Then the marshmallow falls off the stick, as they do. And I added the extra one.
Nice, yeah.
And the ant and the marshmallow all enjoying each other.
That's great. That is really very much into the spirit of what you would see in like you know, Tony Millionaire or George Harriman strip, where it's like using the elements, it's kind of retelling the story in a funny way. So yeah, very nice. I love that. And I don't think the ant's too small in the first panel. I think the color spotting, you know, draws your attention to it pretty quickly.
Okay, cool.
So, very nice. Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Bye.
Go to Graham next.
Hi.
Hey, Graham. Nice to meet you. Graham and I have corresponded numerous times over the years. We've never actually spoken face to face. So great to meet you.
Hi, thanks, Matt. Yes, mine's based on a book I'm writing about Picasso and Cocteau working on the Russian ballet production Parade. So this strip's based in that. So first of all, the three words are apple, box, and horse. And I swapped the characters round in the ABC fashion. So first of all, Cocteau's going, Pablo, I brought you an apple. The second one's Olga, the ballerina, going, why am I here? I could be riding my horse along the River Oster. And then the third one is Pablo going, a box of costumes. I'll make a costume from the box. Fourth panel is Olga saying, I can't dance in a box. The next one, Pablo goes, oh, well, here's an apple. Next one is Cocktail. I'm thinking of a horse, a mythological flying horse. Panel 7, Pablo's going, no, a pantomime horse. Panel 8, Cocktail's going, it's over. All the costumes back in the box. And in the final one, Olga, ballerina, says, don't be sad, John. That's Cocktail. Here's an apple.
Nice. That's great. That's such an interesting application of the constraint to creating this historical vignette. So yeah, very interesting. And of course, in the sort of art historical thing, the connections between Oulipo back to surrealism and back to early 20th century avant-garde, there's like some interesting threads there to think about too. So that's very cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Fantastic, Graham. Thanks. Going to go to Andrea next. Oh, and you're muted.
Did I unmute?
I thought we were looking in Matt Madden's refrigerator for a second.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What are you looking for?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things in 99 Ways, the angle into the fridge.
Inside the fridge, yeah.
Okay, I'm hoping that the lighting is good enough here. This is the name of this comic is The Fog Leaves a Secret, and those are the three words: the fog, leaves, and a secret.
Nice.
And I wanted to experiment with color. My sort of purple blue color is the fog panels. The green color is the leaves panels, and the non-color is the secret. And the other constraint that I made is each row has a silent panel, a sound effect panel, and a dialogue panel.
Oh, lovely.
So the fog lifts as my character blunders through a city park. As she goes, the leaves slap her face, and she sees something, which makes her run away, can't tell anyone. Here's what she sees: a giraffe hiding in the park. And she wonders, was she real or just a trick of the fog? She needs to think, so she goes to sit in a bench under a tree, wondering what to do. And finally, she decides to come back with a great big cardboard box full of lettuce for the giraffe. Come on, eat. And the giraffe puts its hoof against its mouth to say, shh, don't tell anyone. And our hero leaves the crate and retreats back into the fog.
Amazing. That's great. That really tells a whole little short story there. That's nice work.
That was super fun to do. Thanks. It's really nice to meet you too.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Same here. Thanks.
Awesome, Andrea. Thanks. We're going to go to Dio next, and then Marlene, and then Kai. So we'll wait for Dio to come on. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, this was a really fun exercise.
Cool.
So my three words were eye, top, and feather.
Okay.
So are you watching closely? You got the spinning top, feather in an ink bottle, a feather scribbling furiously, eye and abstract looking top. And finally, yeah, the top comes to a stop. And well, stop. So that's it. I had some trouble with figuring out how to link these together, so I went more like dreamlike, and then kind of had the bookends of the eye kind of.
Okay, we're losing your voice a little bit at the end there.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you were maybe covering the mic with your iPad there or something, but
yeah.
So
I'll do it.
the last panel again is an eye saying more of a stylized eye saying, well, sort of bringing the comic to an end almost.
Exactly.
I see. So it kind of goes back to, are you watching closely? Well, stop it. I see. So it's sort of kind of provoking the reader a little bit in the end. Huh?
Yep, exactly.
Nice. This has almost like a psychedelic Fantasia kind of feel to it, like sort of the, Sorcerer's Apprentice, art studio coming to life or something like that when we're not supposed to be looking. Yeah, very cool. I like how each tier, we've talked a lot about the diagonals and how they break up, but in this one, you've created almost like 3 strips that have very different personalities and rhythms to them. So very cool.
Yeah, like the second one was like motion, and then the third one was
very kinetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the light all kind of drops in the end, So
yeah,
nice.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tayo. All right, Marlene is here.
Hi.
Thank you, Matt, for being patient and allowing me in. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
And Andrea's kind of narrative is similar to mine. My title of my 8 panels is Her Majesty. I always adore the trees outside my building, and I thought I'd honor her today, the oak tree, by writing a little narrative about her. I'm familiar with Diamante's acrostic poems, haikus, and those. And so I will have the ability to change this poem into a sonnet. It's 8 lines at the moment, but I can make it 14 by adding a few more. So I'll start off by explaining to you that I've chosen 3 words, which is break, as in the break of dawn, the difference between darkness and light. And then the second word is shroud, which means she envelops herself in the shroud with mist or wind or some natural element. And then she's cunning and clever. And so I started off with the first line saying, she unfolds flushing boughs at break. And you can see she's flashing her beautiful boughs at break, and it's reflected in a way, the sun is reflected in the water.
Right.
The second panel, sheets of green, her shroud. So the greenery is what she wears and shows off to everyone in the village. The third panel is a little bit of the naturalness of where she is, where there's a well and a little house, a fairy house. Misty streaks encases a shroud. And then the next one is hush. The sacred spirit refuse a break. So her heartbeat is depicted in the rhythm of a heart, as in an echogram in a hospital. And then the next one is the colors is the rainbow, flaming colors splashed so cunning. And she helps in distributing the beautiful colors across the sky. Smells of oak inside a shroud. And she's wearing a shroud and sort of floating over the landscape. Seventh one, packing force, no break. So even though that little boat is being swayed from left to right, it's quite steady, and it doesn't go anywhere. And finally, cunning breakers laced in shroud. I really enjoy the 8 panels here and teasing my brain to write a little poem in honor of Her Majesty.
Yeah, great. It's really lovely and very evocative. Thank you. And I hope you'll develop it into the sonnet and keep it as a comic, though. Maybe you make it a longer comic and have the sonnet structure. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right, should we move on?
Thanks, Marlene. Yeah, we'll go to Kai next, and then Bruce, and then we'll finish with Jamie if Jamie's around.
Hi. So, oh God. Sorry, there's this little...
Okay. Hi. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I don't know if you can or maybe that makes it worse. So I did a thing. Good. My 3 words are think, sundial, and pain. Okay. I kind of thought of a story and did those words around it. I don't know if that's cheating. I'm sorry if it is. So the first,
as long as it came up with a comic that you're happy with, then I'm happy.
It's Einstein saying, "Egad, this beach is hot." And in the next panel, he's saying, "You there? I'm in need of a sandal," but because of his accent, it sounds like sundial.
Okay.
And then the salesman is saying, "Oh, Einstein, always thinking about physics. It would make my brain hurt." And then the next one is Einstein saying, "Sundial, sundial." And then he's saying, "Einstein's pretty worried about those sundials." And then the guy's thinking, I kind of didn't know what to do on that one. And then he says,
wait, remind me again, the words were sand and sundial?
Think, sundial, and pain.
Oh, think, sundial, and pain. Okay, gotcha.
So he says, sandal. My feet are in pain. I need sandal. Silly Einstein. And then a single Einstein tear coming from his single eye.
Wonderful. I think you followed the rules there. I think that works really well. That's a funny little story.
Thank you. I didn't come up with it. I think it's an urban myth. I don't know if it's a true story, but I thought it would work well because it has repeated things. I'm gonna look up if it's a real story. I don't know if it actually
about
happens.
Einstein at the beach.
Yeah,
isn't that the name of a modernist opera or something? Was that Einstein and the?
Very much so, but I don't think him complaining about his sandals were in it. But
I don't think it has anyway. I bet there's some pain in there though, and some thought. So, cool. All right, well, look it up.
This is a good time to remind everybody to put these on social media too, so we can have like slightly more permanent records. And I put that in the chat where you can tag us and stuff. Thanks so much, Kai. Yeah. We'll go to Bruce
hashtag Friday Night Comics.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, Bruce.
Hello, everybody. Back to the bird people again. Jeez.
Wait, Bruce, you lowered your hand before I could spotlight you, so that means I got to find you. Got you.
Oh, okay. Raise it again. Oh, there we go. Okay, fine.
Hi.
Again. Hi. How you doing? How you doing? Okay, so this is those pesky bird people again. I had an idea about 3 words. One is crest, one is smoke, and one is brush. Okay, so what happens the day of the castle where he came to town? And he's cresting the top of the hill, first panel, and he bumps in like a weaver, pretty obnoxiously. The weaver gets pissed off about it, and there's smoke coming out of his head, So he brushes past him, so there's smoke. Fires up a smoke and has a smoke. And he starts scratching his crest and talking about things. And the weaver comes up behind him with a bucket of glue and ambushes him from behind a brush. Get it? And then, then he lights off the guy's smoke, with the flammable glue. And,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then he goes running off, and he's got a crest of flame. So,
all right,
don't mess.
Gruesome.
That's the one.
Yeah. Right,
Matt. I want to say thank you very much for introducing me through drawing words and writing pictures. You introduced me to taking the idea of making comics seriously way back in 2006. Yeah.
06 or 07, I think that first one came up. Yeah, thanks you so much. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, Bruce. That's so nice to hear. Cool. So I don't know if Jamie's around. Matt, we have this sort of ritual where if Jamie is here, she sort of comes on and ends, sort of closes the show. But since I'm not hearing her, then maybe she's not here. So I'll spotlight you back, and then we can say goodnight. Thanks so much. This has been really fun. And I expected a little more resistance. I expected a little more panic, but I think a lot of
I'm more than pleased with what you guys came up with. It was really incredible to see all this, the variety of solutions you came up with, and that you really, I mean, you started working before I even really started talking about some of the further ideas here, and you all really took to the task. I love how a lot of you added extra constraints onto it. That's very much in the spirit of what I'm trying to impart here, is that in addition to making creativity game-like, it just pushes you in new directions. And I find that I'm constantly surprising myself when I'm, painting myself into this corner and then trying to get myself out of it. And again, getting into the flow, into that sense of deep play where everything else falls away, including your own, hangups and insecurities about whether your art's any good or what you're doing with your life and all this stuff. You just become focused on solving the problem at hand, and sometimes great art comes out of it. So I'm really excited with what you guys all did, and I hope you'll share it again, like Tom was saying, is it hashtag? What's the hashtag again?
Friday Night Comics, and I put
Friday Night Comics. You could do hashtag Matt Madden too. If you want to get some feedback from people like this kind of comics, you could try doing hashtag Ubapo. I'll put that in the. So Ubapo again is the comics group that does constrained comics and who are I'm associated with, and that's that's a hashtag that you'll see popping up, and so I'll come across, and all of this, I check that stuff out all the time. So if you ever do stuff with constraints and hashtag it, me or Ubapo on Instagram, I'll definitely see it eventually. So
all right,
thanks again.
Let's I usually take this last moment to just make a cacophony of thank yous and tell people to come off mute and just say thank you, and then we'll close it out.
Yay!
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
That was
Great.
awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Everybody
Thank
share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Bye.
Matt and I said we're going to do colors.
Thank
So if you
you.
want
Have
to
a good
put something colorful up, it's a nice.
Anyone who's got a color to hold up, should we do it?
Yeah, sure. If you have a color, any color will do. It doesn't matter what.
I like yellow.
Hold it. Just cover your camera with a color. It could be your shirt. Just lean forward with your shirt. There you go.
Cover it.
Looks like a washcloth, but I'm not going to judge.
Fun.
All righty.
All right. We call that a chromatic selfie. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Hope to see some of you in March.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.